Allow me to contemplate the philosophy of man versus monster. No.
You thought you were gonna win?
I didn't win.
So at one point, Jay had me locked in the studio with my hands tied.
It's on all the platforms. Can somebody come pick him up, please? Can somebody come get him? I don't want him here anymore.
I'm sorry.
We've seen what the king will do to those with their hands in the air like they're partying.
I am the wind, twisting and turning. I give the fire enough to stay burning. Let's play a game. Ha ha ha. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Never really know who you can trust. If they wanna get the bag open, you gotta say no, sir. Sometimes killing is a must. What?
So we're just gonna sit here and pretend like everything is fine. It's fine. Oh man, 2021 can't be any worse.
Bob, you are so naive. 2021's gonna be coming in like the frog behind me.
All right, Sharon, turn the chair. Yes, my name is Harry the Hedgehog, and Sharon, what the hell was that? Turn the chair back. Yes, my name is Harry the Hedgehog, and God damn it, Sharon!
Do they have the Pepsi stuff?
Come on, oh my God. Come on, give me the last strip. Give me some more. Give me more Pepsi! Family makes me want to murder people.
Mom, follow me, follow me.
Is he being naughty?
Yeah.
Close?
Ooh, you in trouble now.
Yeah.
Tell him where you got it.
Where did you get that?
Tell him. Tell him. You stole it.
Hey, what are you doing? Where'd you get that? Did you take that out of the dishwasher?
You know you took it. Tell him.
He's not very happy with your tone on prettiest.
Okay.
Hey, can I have that? Chloe,
Just take it from me.
give it to me.
You just take it from me, Mom.
Give me that. You're naughty. That is not for you.
It's my horn.
Well, neither yours.
Man, if he calls me Fluffy one more time. Hi, Fluffy. What the say Fluffy one more time. Fluffy. Damn it, Scott, you leave me with no other choice. Oh, damn, that was kind of messed up. Oh, shit. How long have you been Were you recording?
It's my turn. No. Yes, it is. You white sack of shit, George. Give me the fucking bowl. Don't give me that look. Give me that. I'm gonna shit in your bed tonight. What? I said I'm gonna shit in your bed, George.
Cross my heart and hope to die. Welcome to my dark side.
In that ship for an awful long time, so perhaps you have simply forgot what you signed. Oh, honestly, did you not read the colony policy that defined you as company property? That waivers your say in autonomy. The conglomerates got you in lock and key. We put the dollar back into idolatry. If you're upset, you can rent an apology. We are a family forged in bureaucracy. No I in teen, but there's con in economy. Were you expecting adventure? Were you hoping for fun? My friend, you're indentured and pleasures exempt from your tenure, so venture back down to your slum that's provided at generous prices. Your worth is determined by your sacrifices. A small term of service went down on the surface. Internment's a freebie that comes with the purchase. You work to earn the right to work, to earn the right to work, to earn the right to work, to earn the right to work.
Hustlers think you're tough, I know they'll drive you bonkers. Mean them once and they'll forever haunt you.
This was a hell of a twist, cause we are weak to a power like this.
What was it?
A woman.
What?
She had us in just 2 words.
Come inside.
Damn.
Welcome to the best part of your life. Go ahead and rest wherever you like. I've got you, don't worry, Sassy's got you now.
Only I stayed outside, but the rest went in.
I'm telling you, this life is amazing when you greet it with open arms. Whatever we face, we'll be fine if we're leading from the heart. No matter the place, we can light up the world. Here's how to start. Greet the world with open arms. Greet the world with open arms.
A random group of people appear and start singing. I see a song of past romance. Where'd you go? You left me alone. To my own devices. What shall I do with all this power?
I am the prophet with the answers you seek. Time I've
I see past and future running free. There is a world where I help you get home, but that's not a world I know. What?
Get a grip on reality, it's virtual insanity. I'm trapped in the gravity, always bringing me down. Keep your head off the clouds, and take the stars out your eyes. Can take the dream out the dreamer when I'm seeing the light. If I'm gonna burn down before the lights go out, you're gonna see it from the ground, ground, ground. I'm a supernova.
Justice not given is forced. Why should I give in my support? He sacrificed his own cohort.
Did you forget they failed to listen? He was betrayed and then imprisoned. But if you make the right decision, he can still build a future with those who miss him.
Fine, release him.
I'm in La Plata, Maryland, a bustling community about 30 minutes south of Washington, D.C., but closer to an hour if you commute. To the west lies the Potomac River, and to the east, the Chesapeake Bay of the Atlantic Ocean. Despite being this far east, the small town of 10,000 residents has been the target of two violent tornadoes, November 9th, 1926 and April 28th, 2002. Both of these twisters were deadly F4s. In fact, there have only been 6 F4 tornadoes to occur north and east of La Plata. Worcester in 1953, West Stockbridge in 1973, Windsor Locks in 79, Hamden in 89, and Great Barrington in 1995. Although the 1926 tornado was more deadly and came without warning, the 2002 tornado that carved a path directly through the town has its own significant place in severe weather history. Occurring well outside of the climatologically favored area for April tornadoes, the supercell traveled nearly 300 miles across the rugged terrain of the Appalachian Plateau of Kentucky and West Virginia, before finally producing a tornado as it traversed the Potomac over 6 hours after it initially formed. While preliminary surveys rated the tornado as F5, further analysis of the $100 million damage path gave the tornado its final and slightly weaker rating of F4. Today we'll analyze the unstable synoptic environment situated in the Mid-Atlantic and Central Appalachians, follow the supercell from birth in Kentucky to death in the Atlantic, and analyze the incredible damage produced just 30 minutes south of the nation's capital, and visit the town today, a place that has changed dramatically in the past 20 years, and also get stranded there. Let's dive in. Now, if you've watched this channel for a period of time or are familiar with severe weathers, you already know the typical synoptic setup needed for tornadoes. Surface moisture, drier air aloft, strong jet stream creating wind shear. But to get these ingredients to overlap this far east in the United States is pretty rare, and tornado climatology maps reinforce this point. A glaring obstacle right off the bat is this little mountain range called the Appalachian Mountains. Stretching 2,000 miles from Newfoundland to Alabama, it provides some resistance to east-west moving weather systems. While tornadoes do occur in this area, they do so much less frequently than glaciated areas to the immediate west. The Appalachian Mountains are tall enough to disrupt low-level jets, or transports of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico at the surface. When storms move into this area, they are less prone to producing tornadoes, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. On April 2nd, 2024, a lone supercell traveled across the Appalachian Plateau into central West Virginia and produced a tornado a few miles east of the New River Gorge, but then quickly dissipated half an hour later. The environment directly to the west over Kentucky and Tennessee was much more favorable for supercells and tornadoes, with decent CAPE, abundant moisture at the surface, and strong wind shear, and had prompted a moderate risk issued by the National Weather Service. Another classic example of a similar setup involving Appalachian tornadoes is May 31st, 1985, when a violent and unstable atmosphere existed over northeastern Ohio and western Pennsylvania. Supercells fired in the mid-afternoon, paraded east, and dropped several violent tornadoes in the central Pennsylvania National Forest before dissipating late into the night. A third example, for good measure, is April 27th, 2011, when countless supercells formed in Alabama and Tennessee, then meandered through the Appalachian Mountains. In fact, one supercell produced a violent tornado within the Smoky Mountains, the most rugged terrain east of the Mississippi. The big point of emphasis here is that you have a favorable environment to the west of the mountains where the storms initiate, and then they move into the mountains where they eventually weaken. But what about the opposite? What if a storm initiates in the Appalachian Mountains, traverses the entire range, strengthens, and then produces a tornado? What atmospheric dynamics have to be at play in order for this to happen? Well, enter April 28th, 2002. That entire month was unseasonably hot across the eastern half of the United States. By the middle of the month, the jet stream had weakened and meandered considerably further north than what is typical for mid-spring, allowing high pressure over the Atlantic Ocean to build westward. By the 18th, it was hitting 95 degrees in DC and Jersey and 88 in Chicago. But as often is the case in mid-spring, what goes up must come down, and throughout the next several days, smaller lows aloft began diving down over the plains. One of these lows moved over Missouri on the 21st, with a jet streak accelerating northwestward over Illinois. Warm, moist air at the surface made the atmosphere very unstable, and by the late afternoon, a line of supercells fired to the south of St. Louis. One of these storms produced an F3 tornado that went through Fairfield, Illinois, killing one man in his mobile home. This series of pictures was taken by Mary Hurley from her farm. It's one of my personal favorites, including this image of an old basketball hoop with the tornado looming behind. On the 24th, another low pushed south through the upper Midwest, and supercells fired along a cold front again in Missouri. One of the southeast drifting supercells produced an F4 tornado on the southern edge of the Mark Twain National Forest. Over the next couple days, a trough of low pressure remained stagnant over the eastern Pacific, but finally on the morning of the 27th, a smaller embedded trough surged eastward across the Great Basin, and a surface low began forming over Colorado. Now, a setup like this in late April would usually be cause for concern for the Central Plains in Missouri. In fact, let's compare weather charts with those of March 13th, 1990, the day of the Heston, Kansas F5 tornado, among many others. On the 500 millibar map, we can see the low aloft is clearly much stronger on March 13th, and the trough flowing around the low exhibits a much larger amplitude. But at least in this level of the atmosphere, both jet streams, or fast-moving bands of wind within the jet stream, are moving at around 70 to 80 knots. Now let's compare surface maps. Both show surface lows developing over eastern Colorado, with April 27th being considerably stronger than March 13th. But the biggest difference between the two, take a look at the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. On April 27th, an expansive cold front and dry air mass was situated over the entire Northeast, blocking warm Gulf air from streaming northward. On March 13th, that low-level jet was unimpeded and made the atmosphere extremely unstable in the Central Plains. Now, this setup could still very well produce severe weather. It all depended on where that warm front was going to be later in the day. Models suggested that the warm front would move considerably further northeast throughout the afternoon, and so the Storm Prediction Center issued a moderate risk for most of the Corn Belt. Areas in the warm sector would likely see discrete storms late in the day that would congeal into a squall line. If you watched my video on the Huntsville tornado of 1989, then you might remember how convective mode works. You can click up in the corner if you need a refresher. The bulk shear vector, when aligned with the initiating boundary, in this case, the cold front, was about 45 degrees, which meant that storms would start off as discrete, then slowly form a line as they marched east ahead of the cold front. But notice here at around 9 p.m. Central, temperatures in the warm sector in Missouri were still only around 60 degrees. The main warm front was still draped across the Ozarks, extending to the southeast. Tornado watches were issued and canceled across western Missouri and Iowa as meteorologists watched the warm front surge further north. Discrete storms did fire, and while a few looked impressive, including one supercell with a massive hail core north of Jefferson City, none of them actually produced tornadoes. Throughout the overnight hours, the low-level jet was now well established, and the influx of moisture into the Mississippi and Ohio River valleys aided in the formation of a line echo wave pattern. Strong individual downdrafts within the line of storms were causing them to bow out and give the line this wavy shape. A tornado watch was issued for the southern portion of the line, but again, no tornadoes actually occurred. Now, while these storms were currently in an unstable environment, they would run into several issues within the next few hours. One, the storms were headed for the rugged terrain of the Appalachian Mountains, which, as we established earlier, often disrupt the thermodynamic processes within a thunderstorm, causing it to weaken. Two, directly to the east lay an extensive swath of cloud cover and rain. You see, when a shower thunderstorm moves through an area, especially if that rain is widespread, it uses up some of that potential energy in the atmosphere, making it more stable and less prone to future severe weather. Remember, with CAPE, if you look at the equation, you're essentially looking at temperature differences with respect to height, and widespread rain can minimize that temperature difference. So, does this mean that the severe weather threat was just over for the day? No, and this is where we get to talk about air mass recovery, the process that describes how an unstable atmosphere, which has been stabilized by convection, can then destabilize again, making it prime for severe weather later in the day. With a lot of severe weather events on day one, you'll get leftover showers and thunderstorms from the evening before, which move through the morning of day one, and they keep that surface temperature cool. What meteorologists often look for with air mass recovery is sunshine, because the sun will heat the ground and the air above it, and now that warm air can rise into thunderstorms. You don't need a ton of widespread sunshine either. A couple hours of mostly sunny or even partly sunny skies can often be enough to fuel an outbreak. While the morning storms were going to die out as they hit the Appalachians, meteorologists at the Storm Prediction Center expected sunshine later in the day in Virginia and Maryland, and along with a surge of Gulf moisture and approaching shortwave trough, were enough to warrant the upgrade of a slight risk to a moderate risk of severe weather. By 11 a.m. Eastern, storms were already firing along the cold front in western Ohio. Surface temperatures and dew points were both in the low 60s. Shortly after initiation, a tornado watch was issued for the entirety of Ohio, but the Storm Prediction Center acknowledged that tornadoes were not the main threat here. The cold front was racing so fast across Ohio that the convective mode would likely transition to linear as the storms progressed across the watch area, making damaging wind and hail the main threat. Now, as the cold front moved eastward, warm air surged into the central Appalachians. Sun for the past few hours really helped air mass recovery in the region, and CAPE was soaring above 2,500 joules per kilogram. With decent wind shear and a discrete storm mode, long-track violent tornadoes were very possible, if that rugged terrain from the Appalachians didn't interfere with the dynamic processes of those thunderstorms. And so a PDS tornado watch was issued at 1:21 p.m. for the entirety of West Virginia. Now, I want to follow the path of one cluster of supercells in particular that formed to the east of Lexington, Kentucky at around noon Eastern. As these storms progressed across the Appalachian Plateau into West Virginia, you'll notice an interesting behavior. Several of these storms split into two separate storms, similar to how animal and plant cells divide. This is actually a fairly common occurrence. In fact, the change in wind speed and direction with height, or wind shear, which is what causes these updrafts to rotate in the first place, can actually dictate the life cycle of each of the individual storms after the split happens. But why does that split happen in the first place? Well, wind shear causes vorticity in the horizontal plane, And in order to get a thunderstorm to rotate, you need that horizontal tube of rotating air to tilt into the vertical. Air that rises rapidly up from the surface is the mechanism that stretches the rotation vertically. It's like laying this slinky on a flat surface, picking up the middle and lifting it. Now on either side, you have clockwise spinning rising air and counterclockwise spinning rising air. When a downdraft forms in the thunderstorm due to falling precipitation, it can pull this tube of spinning air downwards, and the north and south updrafts move further apart. Additionally, when an air parcel is rotating and rising, it's pushing its way upwards through other air molecules, causing higher pressure aloft and lower pressure in its wake. This vertical pressure gradient force also aids in the development of new updrafts on the opposing sides or flanks of the original one. So what happens to these two new thunderstorms after the split? Well, the best way to visualize this is using a hodograph, which maps out wind, speed, and direction by height, and then all of the points are connected with a line. Let's take a look at a straight hodograph. At the surface, the wind is 7 meters per second out of the southeast, and then slows down to 5 meters per second, 1 kilometer above the ground. Then as you go up, wind speeds increase and become more westerly, hitting maximum speeds at 40 meters per second, or near 100 miles an hour. This right here is the mean wind vector. It is the average speed and direction of the wind between the surface and 6 kilometers. You would expect storms that form in this area to more or less follow the speed and path of the mean wind vector. This is the bulk shear vector. It shows the general direction of the wind shear between 0 and 6 kilometers. Now, after a supercell splits in two, the leftmost storm typically moves to the left of the mean wind vector, and the right moving storm typically moves to the right of the mean wind vector. These storms are named left mover and right mover, respectively. In a situation where you have a straight hodograph, the left and right movers are equally strong, while the right mover updraft spins cyclonically, and the left mover anti-cyclonically. With a curved hodograph below 3 kilometers, the right mover will be the dominant storm, and the left mover will weaken over the next couple hours. And this makes sense. The low-level curve in this hodograph means strong southerly winds at the surface or a low-level jet are feeding the storm, enhancing the southern-facing updraft. The final scenario, where the hodograph curves in the opposite direction between 0 and 3 kilometers, is quite rare, and in this case, the left mover would be the dominant storm. But think about this for a second. This would imply that the warm, moist air at the surface is streaming into the storm from the north, and the source of moisture in the United States is the Gulf of Mexico, which is by default the southernmost part of the United States. You need an extremely odd synoptic situation where a large amount of surface moisture is displaced very far north, but getting blown back to the south. Clearly, in the case of our supercells over West Virginia, the right mover was typically the more dominant storm and continued on a trek east-southeast throughout the warm, unstable environment. At 3:05 p.m., a tornado watch was issued for most of Virginia, D.C., and all of Maryland, followed by a mesoscale discussion regarding the watch area. Maryland and D.C. were just now seeing sunshine and would continue to do so until the supercells west of the Monongahela National Forest got there. That is, if they got there. While they looked impressive on radar, they had yet to cross the 4,000-foot ridges of the Monongahela National Forest, a near 3,000-foot elevation change over a very short period. If these storms survived the next 60-mile journey, they would be in a prime environment for tornadoes. And the storms did indeed make the trek, but weakened noticeably as a result. By this time, around 4:30 p.m., the synoptic environment in Virginia had changed dramatically. As the shortwave trough aloft approached the area, a strong low-level jet developed, bringing in a surge of low-level moisture into the region, increasing wind shear and instability. These winds likely converged in the Shenandoah Valley as the southernmost supercell approached, and wouldn't you know it, it finally produced a tornado, a short-lived F2 that lifted before the storm crossed the Massanutten Range. At around this time, Steve Maciejewski was on a first-class flight from Philadelphia to Atlanta when he saw this supercell from the airplane window and caught this footage of the incredible updraft. Being a research meteorologist for the FAA, he knew exactly what he was seeing. As the storm continued to the east on the now flat terrain, it cycled several times, producing funnel clouds over Fauquier County, but didn't have enough juice to touch down before the downdraft choked out the inflow. Despite this, the National Weather Service kept issuing tornado warnings out ahead of the storm, until 6:30 p.m. The storm was now directly over Quantico, approaching the Potomac, and it had failed to produce another tornado despite cycling several times. The National Weather Service chose to issue a severe thunderstorm warning for Charles County, Maryland, just to the east of the Potomac, and it was a bit puzzling why. The service assessment gives us a couple clues. The hook-like appendage, or hook echo, had dissipated over several volume scans prior to the severe thunderstorm warning being issued. 2 forecasters at the office were tasked with issuing warnings, and they were busy issuing severe thunderstorm warnings for northern Maryland as the storm crossed the Potomac. They were also worried about too many false alarms, wanting to minimize their false alarm rates. And in this case, the decision proved to be fatal. Additionally, storms in this synoptic environment have a tendency to strengthen when crossing the Potomac. It's a 1.5 mile wide body of water, being cooler than its surrounding environment, and supercells love producing tornadoes near temperature boundaries. And at 6:56 p.m., a tornado touched down near Marbury, Maryland, moving east-southeast. Golf ball-sized hail was dropping just to the north in Indian Head. The thin cone tornado moved through heavily forested area, flattening a swath of trees into the community of Ripley, where it damaged several homes at F2 intensity. At this point, people in the community of La Plata, 5 miles to the southeast, could see the tornado. In fact, if you look at this image taken from the Quailwood subdivision, it looks like something out of Kansas. That rain-free base is just textbook supercellular structure. At 7 p.m., the tornado report was relayed to the National Weather Service, and at 7:02, a proper tornado warning was issued. La Plata had about 3 minutes to act. Now, this was not La Plata's first dance with a major tornado. In 1926, an F4 hit the La Plata school, killing 12 children and 5 others instantly. Since then, the town had grown substantially. The Civista Medical Center was established in the 1930s to serve the residents of Charles County. In 1940, the Harry W. Neese Memorial Bridge was completed, connecting southern Maryland to eastern Virginia for the first time, increasing traffic to the community. Sirens were installed in the 1960s, but they were mainly used to alert of fires and were not operational for severe weather. By the year 2002, 6,500 residents lived in the community, and many of them were standing outside, staring at this twisting condensation funnel heading right for them. And that's another thing too, the condensation funnel was invisible about halfway up. It didn't look like some menacing F4 tornado. It appeared fairly weak, until it hit the Quailwood subdivision. Outer walls of homes along Morgan's Ridge Road collapsed as the multiple vortices churned a path parallel to the street, maximizing destruction. Homes were not anchored to their foundations well in this area and suffered catastrophic damage as a result. At about this time, Jeff Posey was standing on Maple Avenue looking northwest at the approaching tornado. The debris field was enormous, even though the condensation funnel wasn't visible. This water tower would no longer be standing in a mere 60 seconds. About a mile to the north of downtown was the La Plata Village Center, containing a Food Lion, AutoZone, and Family Dollar. And being a Sunday evening, many residents were running some last-minute errands for the work week ahead. Tom Albritton and Richard King took the following 2 photographs of the tornado, the second being the iconic image featured in the Maryland Independent. The Thomasons were also near the Food Lion and took this footage as the twister struck downtown. First to go was the Archbishop Neal School, which thankfully was not in session on a Sunday night. The sisters in the convent survived, having gone downstairs when they heard the approaching tornado. The La Plata Shopping Center, a block away, looked like a war zone. The CVS sign was leaning to the east, wearing twisted sheet metal from various other buildings. The roof was lifted clean off the KFC and the United Methodist Church. The volunteer fire department narrowly escaped the 200-mile-an-hour winds. The water tower did not and would not stand again. Upon falling, it released hundreds of gallons of water, flooding 3 neighboring homes. One of the few places F4 damage was observed was 2 adjacent homes downwind of a lumber yard, a steel and brick structure. Engineer Tim Marshall observed that debris from this lumber yard was sent flying through these 2 homes, locally intensifying the damage. Matt Ament was with his uncle and his dad on North Wiltshire Court as the tornado was churning through downtown La Plata. Matt grabbed his camcorder and started filming the iconic footage that you've likely seen before.
Right by here.
Yeah. No need to shift now. You keep them in. Uh-oh.
And then the golf ball-sized hail begins to fall while the freshly waxed 3rd Gen 4Runner sits exposed in the driveway.
Hail! It's hailing! Flip! Jeez, oh flip!
Oh, wait, Java, get in here! Come on, come here! Holy shit!
It's coming from that way.
Here, go!
And a Ford Mustang, I suppose. By this time, a debris ball was clearly visible on radar, as well as the massive hail core. On Hawkins Gate Road, a man was standing inside his newly constructed home as the tornado hit, killing him instantly. As the tornado continued to tear southeast towards the Chesapeake Bay, Andrew Gardner positioned himself at the corner of Solomon's Island Road and Flag Ponds Parkway. Looking north and east, he captured this footage of the tornado as it approached and crossed into the bay, becoming a waterspout. The electric transmission towers you see here supply power from the Calvert Cliffs nuclear power plant, less than a mile to the tornado's south. Disaster was averted. Once over the Chesapeake Bay, a second satellite tornado touched down, likely a result from the secondary circulation on the southern side of the mesocyclone. The tornado continued into eastern Maryland, staying in mainly rural forested areas for the duration of its life. Chaos ensued in downtown La Plata as the sun dipped below the horizon. Ambulances rushed down congested Route 301 to rescue shoppers from collapsed buildings. Due in part to its proximity to Washington, D.C., the rescue and cleanup operations that took place were fast and furious. With 400 structures destroyed, of which 165 were businesses, debris was littered everywhere. City officials were reportedly frustrated with FEMA, who looked to minimize the cost of recovery efforts, when the city just wanted to clean up fast and figure out the expenses later on. That paid off, as the town was 98% clean of debris within 12 days. There has not been a violent tornado this close to the DC metro since the La Plata incident, and if it happened again today, thousands more would be affected. This part of the country is experiencing huge population growth, and La Plata is now twice as large. And now I'm standing atop the hill on Charles Street, thinking about what it must have been like to watch the tornado approach town. Along Firehouse Alley exists the Star Memorial Garden in memory of those who lost their lives in both the 1926 and 2002 tornadoes. My girlfriend thought we should make a contribution to the garden, and so we left this little guy. I think he fits in pretty well. If you guys want to learn more about the events that unfolded in La Plata on that day, I highly recommend you check out this book, Hope Triumphs Over Chaos by Anthony Pizzilla. He includes dozens of stories of survivors, and the book is just filled with pictures you're not going to find anywhere else. I did find a couple factual errors, whether it be an address is wrong or the direction that a picture is taken is incorrect, but overall, this is a fantastic read. If you want to learn more about supercell dynamics and how storms split, and you're a little bit more mathematically inclined, check the link in the description. There are a couple of research papers that I think you're really going to like.
Well, it's a little bit dangerous, my friend. You need a mindset change. With this, you can get away with playing safe.